Hi ladies and gentlemen, I hope everyone is doing well today. Today we are taking a look at the Graphs Chemquest. Right up top we have some information on types of graphs. I'm about to discuss when to use each type of graph. This will be very important when you're answering questions 1, 2, and 3. In questions 1, 2, and 3 you have to read, look at which kind of data we have, and then say which type of graph you want to use. Because of that, I would recommend pausing this video right now, reading these 3 questions, and then once you read those questions, unpause it, and then listen to what I say about the graphs. Alright, so back onto the graphs. So when we have a pie graph, when I remember a pie graph, I think of part of a whole. I think of part of a whole because of the word pie. It makes me think about pie in general. When you look at a pie graph, you usually have one piece of the pie, so you use pie slices to show relative sizes of the data. You remove the one slice and then you can look at each slice individually. You can also add all of the slices of pie together and then look at the pie as a whole. Next, when I am thinking about bar graphs, I highlighted 2 important words for you. I had highlighted the word different and variables. In this case, when I think about variables, I think of groups. It's plural, there's multiple. So in this, each bar will represent a different group. Next, we have a line graph. So in this case, I highlighted we have a variable. In this case, it's singular. In this case, it was plural. That's why we have multiple groups. In this case, we have one thing or one group. And we usually analyze how it changes over time. So use those hints, use those keywords to try to figure out which questions in 1, 2, and 3 and which one of those, which graph you want to use. Remember, in pie graphs, we're going to look at part of whole or pieces. Bar graphs, we have multiple groups. And line graphs, we're looking at how one thing changes over time. Next, moving on to question 4. In question 4, we're looking at the following graphs. We need to determine which one of these graphs, A, B, or C, is the most meaningful. Whenever we look at a graph, we're usually looking at a graph to try to determine information, to try to learn something. So which of these graphs has the most information on it? That one is probably the best. Next, we have question 5. Question 5, hopefully you guys found that the answer was graph C. It is graph C because graph C has the most information on it. When you're evaluating this graph, what information does graph C have that the other graphs are missing, specifically graph A, that makes it have that more information? Next, question 6. So question 6, we are using question 2's data and picturing it graphed. So if we go back quickly and look at question 2 is right here. We are looking at phones sold. So we see that Apple sold 4 million iPhones, Motorola sold 2 million Droids, HTC sold 3 million Evos. Over here we see that they decided to use a bar graph. They used a bar graph because we have 3 different variables, 3 different groups, 3 different phones. So that's what we see here. Which one of these graphs is easier to read and why? That is part A. Pretty self-explanatory. Next we have B. So B, we need to label the y-axis from one of these. Remember guys, we are trying to get information from graphs. Which one of these it has the most descriptive label that gives you the most information? Same for C. So this time in C, you have to come up with your own name. So on the y-axis, we already have something about the number of phones sold. What is the other piece of information that we need to know from question 2? The other groups. And then lastly, you need to come up with a title for the graph. Your title should be a short phrase that describes what the graph is saying. Next, we have drawing good graphs. So down here, I'll help you guys draw the first graph. Make sure you practice, take down good notes, understand what I'm doing. Your do now is going to be a graph. Use this graph to help you when we do it. So when we graph, the few things that we're always looking for are descriptive titles, labels, and the graph that takes up most of the paper. We want it to be spread out. Remember when we were looking at these graphs, this graph is much easier to read because of how much room there is. So now question 7 wants us to graph the data from question 3. So the data from question 3 is right here. We have some months, we have types of phones, and we have the amount of, or no, we don't, we have one type of phone, we only have iPhones, and then we have the amount of iPhone sold in each month. So because you have one variable, and because you have, you're measuring the change in time, you are going to use a line graph. So when we come down to this graph paper that has been added for us, I already labeled the titles just to save a little bit of time. Remember guys, we always need descriptive titles and descriptive labels. So my title is iPhone sales bi-monthly. I picked bi-monthly because we go January, March, and we skip February. It's every other month. So we will have 6 months on our graph. Then I have my y-axis as my millions of phones sold, and then my x-axis is the month. So I already have a little bit of knowledge on how big this graph is. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you are going to want to count all of these little spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now you would find that there are 30 right down here. So that lets us space out 6 months, all 6 apart, all 5 apart. Sorry. Then we have over here on this side we have 22. So the way I'm going to spread this out is I'm going to spread it out by 10. So then I've already counted 10 out. We go right here and right here. So we'll have 10 million, 20 million. Now down here is 0. So then next we can count our months. I've already spread them out for us. But remember, you have to count and divide by how many you have. So then over here I have January, March, May, no abbreviation needed. Same with July, September, November. Oh, I guess no, it's July, August, yeah. I don't know why I was drawing a blank on my months. So then next we need to plot our data. So the first thing we do is we come over here, we see January is 2.4 million iPhones. So then we come over January, and each of these is 1, remember, so we go 1, 2, and then we do our best estimate for 0.4. We do the same thing for March. Come over here for March, we have 1.2 million, so we do the same thing, we go up, and then our best estimate for 0.2. Then we look at May. May was awesome with 18.2. So we come over here to May. The way I like to do is because 18 is a pretty high number, it's easier to go up to 20 and then count down. 1, 2, to 18. Then we have July, we have 14.4. I'm going to do it the same way, go up to 20 and then count down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then after July, September we had another low month with 3.1. So we go 1, 2, 3, and our best estimate for 0.1. And November, 2.2. 1, 2, and our best for 0.2. Then we will just connect the dots. We connect the dots in the order that they go. Normally you'll do this with a little ruler. I did not bring any of these home with me, so I'm going to try to use the paper the best I can. It won't be perfect, but it will come out. Alright, and that is our line graph. Now we can use this line graph we can read the line graph to get some data to try to figure out some of these questions, like question 8. Question 8 asks us about the number of iPhones sold in August. So we know August is right here between July and September. There are 6, so we can count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we go up. So then we see where August would be, connects to the line right here. So I make a little mark to help me remember. Then I come over and I look at where it is on my y-axis. Over here on my y-axis, it's at 9. So we've sold 9 million phones in August. So next, this number 9, we're just using this data to try to figure out when Apple starts selling a new phone. So this is not true. I know they usually sell their phones in August, but according to this, their new phones in August. But according to this graph, when do you think they sold their new phone? And then lastly, we have our last section on platinum and catalytic converters. So I've highlighted some of the important information. I want you guys to read through this. I'm not going to talk about everything. A few things that I do want to talk about that will be important when you are answering the questions is it tells us that platinum metal is used as a catalyst in these devices. It then goes on to talk a little bit more about a catalytic converter. That is not as important as what comes down here. It's highlighted. After it talks a little bit about the reaction, it tells us what platinum does for the reaction. The presence of platinum makes the reaction faster. That is what the platinum does, and platinum is a catalyst. So when you are thinking about question 14, use that information to help us. So the next kind of information will be just using this graph, being able to read a graph. So I'll help you with the first couple, and then after that, I'll let you guys take it away. So question 10. According to the graph, what happens to the amount of carbon monoxide emitted from the vehicle over time? So we need to look at our key. It tells us that the circles are percent platinum remaining, and that the rectangles are the carbon monoxide emissions. So when it's asking about the carbon monoxide, which we see right here, we know that it's talking about the rectangles. So we look at the graph. As time goes on, we can look at the age of the catalytic converter. What happens as the age increases? The carbon monoxide emissions increase because we see carbon monoxide over on this side of the graph. So the carbon monoxide emissions increase. So then next we are looking at the catalytic converter at a specific time. So it tells us 9 years, so we need to look at the labels and figure out where 9 years is. 9 years is right here because we're looking at the age and it's 9. So next we can use our old piece of paper and we can look at the percent platinum. So this time we are looking at the circles. I use my paper to help me make a line. So then I go up here to the line where it intersects. And then I'm looking at percent platinum, so I'm going over to the axes on the left side of the graph. And again, I make another little mark. And then this just helps me. It lets me see how much I have. It is just over 75 because these would have to go in 5s if there was one dash in between. So it is about 76%. So the next few questions are the same. You are going to use this graph to find the specific point that you're looking for, and then you are going to answer the questions. Like always, guys, if you have any questions, make sure you just write down where you get stuck, write down what you need help with, and remember that counts. So like always, I'm going to try to end this with a joke. This is a one of my jokes. I'm waiting for jokes to be sent in to me from people. So here goes. Why does a rapper need an umbrella? Faux drizzle. Well, I hope everyone has a great day. I will see you guys in class.